Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Irgen Shir Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zev Smith on which foods require a new bracha. I'd like to have the great exclusive sponsor in a shir called Irgen Shir Torah at 718-851-8651.
My sister, this is a true story. Someone made kiddush once on grape juice. At least he thought it was grape juice, and then when he drank it, he realized that his children had made grape drink, kept it in the same bottle, and it was mamish clear-cut shahako. Now we have two problems. Number one, the guffin is a bracha levatala, and number two, as the Mishnah writes in Reish Ayin Aleph Sif Kat Ayin Ches, if you make kiddush on water, you're not yoytze to the kiddush, because you have to have either wine or at least chamar medina. So now he has the problem of bracha levatala, and the kiddush is not chal. But the redeeming factor was there was grape juice on the table, a bottle of grape juice. Can he quickly take the grape juice and drink that, and then the kiddush is chal, and the bracha is chal? Or maybe we'll say, if he was holding the kais of grape drink, which is shakal, the bracha is going only on that, and he can't grab anything else to try to remedy the problem. In other words, the question is simple. When you make a bracha holding something, is the bracha chal only on that food? Or maybe das, that you're going to drink the other grape juice, would allow you to drink now without a bracha. I just heard a similar shaila, true story again. And he realized he didn't bench on what he ate at home. So he asked the poiskim where he was in the second place, and they said, no, you can't eat bread here because you don't make a bracha here. And you don't want to go home, so what do they paskin? You don't bench, which is certainly wrong. But taka, is it an eitzah to eat bread in the new location? Or maybe the bracha was chal on the bread at home, not in the bread in the new location. Then we had a shayla, someone made a bracha on rice, and he wanted to eat cake. Does the bracha on rice pat the cake? Or a really interesting question, I once saw this, someone was making a bracha on a water fountain, the water, and he put the water on, and he was saying a very slow bracha, and someone's getting nervous. He says, why are you wasting that water? So he said, no, you can't, you have to make a bracha on the water. But it's basically, as Al Derech Weiss, to try to find one yesod, there's something that we have to really clarify today. Is it really true, when you say a bracha on something that you're holding, that the bracha is chal on that thing? And anything else that you want to add later, you can't include in the bracha? You're holding rice, so it's rice, not cake. Maybe we'll say a bracha is sort of like a matir. The eitz allows you to eat all the eitz. Who said you have to have a mind that you want to eat a grape? Maybe once you made an eitz, you include all eitz. Maybe once you made a bracha on rice mezainis, that includes cake. And I'll give you a mashal, the sabra sa'oizin. We all said Birchas HaTorah today, right? But imagine I would announce that today we're learning Zoya. How many people had a mind to pat the Zoya, Birchas HaTorah? I don't think too many. So how could you learn Zoya without a C is all inclusive, all bread, and maybe guffin is all grape juice. Or maybe Birchas Hanen, and you have to be more specific. So that's our question. And basically, we're going to find something I think is very beautiful, custom-made for our shayla. Because you might say, well, maybe if the grape juice is in front of you, so the bracha goes on that, maybe das helps, or maybe you don't need any of that. The bracha is a matir, any food, the same bracha, the bracha will cover. So consider the following question. Someone is on a boat, and he's holding an apple in his hand. He's standing by the front of the boat, and he makes a very good bracha, and before he eats, he sneezes, and he dropped the apple into the ocean. Now he's standing with a bar pre-eitz, and he has no apple. But there's an box of apples right nearby. Can he quickly grab an apple from that box and eat the apple? So this question, without dramatics, is a Beferish Yerushalmi in Brachas Perek Vav Halacha Aleph. The Yerushalmi has a question. You made a bracha on a type of a bean, and you dropped it. Zakti Yerushalmi, can you take another bean and let the bracha be chal? Azoi fragt the Yishalmi. In other words, the Yishalmi holds maybe if you're holding this bean and you dropped it, so the bracha. The Yishalmi, that's not true. Ma beinoi levein amas hamayim. Frag the Yishalmi, if you make a bracha on a running brook of water, so when you start the bracha is going on this body of water, but the water is running. And by the time you drink the water, it's different water. And evidently the bracha is good. So the Yishalmi is asking, it seems that you make a bracha on water A, it's good for water B. So why can't the bracha on apple A cover water B, apple B? So up to Yishalmi, what kind of comparison is that? When you make a bracha on the running water that you know is running, you have das on any water that comes, because you know you can't drink this specific water. But if you made a bracha on apple A, who said it covers apple B? Azoi state in the Yishalmi. So it seems, and that's the way the Yishalmi goes a little further, and seems to conclude la halacha that water, a running brook of water, is an exception. Taka the bracha is chal on all the water. But if you made a bracha on fruit A, is Beferish Yishalmi. And it seems l'chayra that das helps. Where do I see das helps? From the case of the Amas Hamayim. What's the exact story of the Yishalmi? Was it talking that you plan on eating a second apple? So why can you grab a second apple? Zok the Rosh in Masech the Brachas Perek Vav Ois Chaf Siv Chaf. We learn from the Yishalmi, if you made a bracha on apple A, even if you were planning on eating more apples and the apples were in front of you, but since you made the bracha on this apple and you dropped it, there goes the bracha. In other words, the Rosh is saying a tremendous chiddush. If you made a bracha on this fruit and you lost it, you lost the bracha. Amas Hamayim, you made a bracha only on what eventually you got. But the Rosh says beferish, Lefanav doesn't help, and Das doesn't help. If you made a bracha on this, it's chal on this. In other words, bracha rishayin is a chalois on the food you're holding. You cannot grab another apple, it won't help. Shita of the Rosh and Rabbeinu Yoina in Masech the Brachas. However, the Ravid, this is all quoted in the Beis Yosef, and now with Simon Reish Vav, Zok the Ravid, as long as there are other apples in front of you, then you could grab another apple and save the bracha. What did the Ravid hold? You don't need holding. Das, Lefanav, is enough. You had an apple in front of you, the bracha is chal on the other apple as well. And the final shita is the Agoyis Maimoni in Hilchos Brachas Perek Daled Oizayin, quoting Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam says you don't need a Lefanav. Even if there's no apples in front of you, if you had a mind to get a second apple later, you could grab the second apple now, and the bracha is chal on that. In other words, the three tzaddim that we began with, is it enough that you had das? Do you have to have in front of you? Or is it only on this chayfetz? Is three shitas in Rishonim. The Rosh holds the bracha is chal on what you're holding, nothing else. The Ravid holds that Lefanav is also good. And Ben Otam is probably the biggest chiddush, even if it's not in front of you. Das is good enough. So our shaila is mamash the three shitas. The Shulchan Aruch in Reish Vav, Siv Vav, paskins like the Rosh. You made a bracha on this apple, the bracha is chal on this apple, and that's it. The Ramah adds, but if you had das would extend it to other fruit as well. Zok the Bir Allah and the Kafachayim, the Ramah is arguing on the Mechaba that it's lav dafka what you're holding. It's anything that you had das on. And the Bialacha mentions the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam, even if you didn't have das per se, but if it's in front of you, the fact that it's there, that's sort of like a das automatically. So it seems lahalacha that basically we could be mekel al safek brachas lahakol. Any connection is good, whether it's in front of you, whether you had das. But I think the bottom line is there has to be some connection. You can't make a bracha on A and something that you totally didn't think about, then use it. There has to be some connection, whether it's lefanov, which is a sort of subconscious connection, or the fact that it's das. But basically, the Rosh is the most machmir, like the Mechaber is. But we Ashkenazim and rather the Kaf HaChaim says even the Svardim are mekel with the Ramah Shita al Safek Brachas Lahakol. If you had das or lefanov, you could include that in the bracha. And to apply this lamaisa, let's go to our original shaila. A person made kiddush thinking it was grape juice, and it was really a shahakol drink. Can he quickly take from the grape juice on the table, which is lefanov, and rather he also had das? Zok the Maril, talking about one of the Rishonim in Simon Sadik Beis, was this very shaila. He could quickly grab the grape juice and be yaitz the kiddush and the gafim. The Darkei Moshe and our Simon Sivkot and Zayin says, oh, that Maril has to hold like a Rabbeinu Tam or the Ravid, but he argues on the Rosh. So we see the Maril is going with the Shita of the Makilim, like the Ramah Paskin, and not like the Rosh. So here we see a better understanding of Hilchas Brachas. There has to be some connection. It's not anywhere USA. It has to be das, lefanov, and then you could use that for the bracha to be chal. But now I want to ask a different question. Quickly grab another apple. Now I'm asking a totally different question, which is very common. I made a bracha on an apple, I didn't drop the apple, I ate the apple, everything went great. The bracha was chal without suffix. Now I want to eat an orange. Can I use the same bar priates on the apple and eat an orange? What's the shaila? I made a bracha on an apple. Maybe you could have another apple. Who said an orange? Can I upgrade it and eat a grape, which is Shivas Haminim? So this is a different question. Because in the first struggle we had, the bracha wasn't chal yet, so you want to grab something else. Now the bracha was chal. This is what the pais can refer to as gerara. If the bracha was chal, fine. You want to add another food? So basically, the Shulchan Aruch in Reish Vav Sif Hey says, if you made a bracha on an apple, and you ate an apple, listen to this, then you want to add a different apple, they brought it to you, which means that it wasn't in front of you, or a different min, you made a bracha on an apple, now it's an orange, for the bracha to be chal, it has to be chal. So you need something similar. But once you made the eitz, you ate the apple. You want to eat an orange? Gesundheit heit. Gerara is easier to achieve than chalais. This is not l'chol hadayis. And actually this is a big sugya in Hilchas Shchita, in Simon Yud Tes, in Yeridea. But to make a long story short, because we have a big agenda, Mr. Burris said, the same min mamish, you made a bracha on the 8th, you could eat another apple. Why? As the Rav in Sif Tes explains, because darki shel adam to eat more of the same food. You made a bracha on an apple or 8th, you ate an apple, you could take another apple. Because it's like this das, you might eat another apple. But says the Mishnah Berurah, but someone that wants to eat now a different fruit, an orange, who says it works? You made apple, not orange, even though it's the same bracha. Zok the Mishnah Berurah, that's something to think about. And Zok the Mishnah Berurah and Sif Cotton Chav Beis, that basically it's not kedai to take an orange if you didn't have a mind to part of the orange. But he says an important exception. If when you're still eating the apple, you decide, I'm going to have an orange afterwards, that's enough of a connection that you could eat the orange. And I think the Hezbollah Pashit. If you're still eating the apple, so the bracha is still in effect, is still in progress. So then you could grab an orange. It's like there's a das b'shas ma'isa. But if you finish the apple entirely, you want another apple? Gesundheit. You want an orange? It does say that if you had das, of course it works. But if there was no das, then either if the orange was in front of you, then in front of you, lefanav is good. Or you connected it b'shas the achila. Now, lamaisa, as we said, Mishnah Berurah does bring shitas that you could use it to a different fruit, but lamaisa, it's not kedai. We have this issue. The Mishnah Berurah does say, even the makilim that hold you could go from apple to orange, but a min achal legamri, a totally different food, you can't extend. What's a different food? Listen to his mashal. You made a bracha on fish, oichel. Now you want to drink beer, which is dafke beer, but you want to drink something. You can't go from food to drink unless you add das, because that's a min achal legamri, zok the Mishnah Berurah. And a min achal legamri, the bracha doesn't cover unless you add specific das. You could go from an apple to an apple, for sure. Apple to an orange is a machlokes, but from drink to food or vice versa, for that, there's no grara, because there's no connection. Unless a typical person, he made a bracha on his supper, he had a mind to eat everything. That's das. Also, I must mention once and for all, because we're not going to say this again, but it's pashit, even if you hold brachas include more than what you said. The bracha on the apple includes an orange, or you had das. But let's say you had a fakir to das. A person came to a snack and he's on a diet. He says, I'm only eating one apple, no more. Then, says the Mishnah Berurah, one apple is one apple. You can't eat another apple, even though it's the same min. If you had das fakir to limit what you're eating, so then that das overrides anything else. So, when there's das fakert, you want to save appetite for later, I'm only eating one piece of cake, you can't even eat a second piece of cake, even the same in. That's pashut. Today we're talking about a person, what we call stam das. He made a bracha, wasn't thinking much. So to have another apple is l'chaladeyis. To go from an apple to an orange is a machlokes. You could be makel if either it's the fun of or you had a mind when you're eating to continue. But a min achal legamri, that even grara does not work. This is basically the sugya. Now, I should mention, the poskim say, if you eating the apple and you decide to have an orange, that's enough. You don't have to actually bring the orange, because the svara is very pashut. Once you decide to have the orange, that's included in the bracha of the apple. So lav dafka, you brought the orange, but the fact that you had a mind, that's enough of a connecting force. What does it mean, lefanav? So lefanav is pashit, your das is on it. Lemashal, you bring out a bowl of fruit, you make a bracha on the apple, so if the orange is there, the bracha goes on that. But it's lav dafka lefanav. Let's say a person is preparing a kiddush, and he leaves some food in a side room. So that's also considered lefanav, even though it's not in front of him. Lefanav means this das. I'll give you a fakir teshayla. Someone had food on the table from last night's suda, or last night's snack. He had no das at all. He didn't know it was even there. So if there's no das, then lefanav doesn't really play a role. A trickier question, a person sitting in the dining room, and there's food in the cabinet he didn't think about. But from where he's sitting, he could see that food. So Raya Mekaimai works regarding Shini Makaim, but doesn't work regarding Das. You can't create Das if there's no Das. So Lefanav seems to be pretty literal. It has to be Lefanav, i.e. there has to be Das. The Taz in Kuf Ayin Dalet Sivav says, what we'll see is a tremendous yisoid for our sugya. A person goes to the store, this is important, and he bought one roll, and he finished it, and then he decides he wants another one. And he sends someone to buy another roll. He didn't change the location. He sent someone to buy a roll. Zok the Taz, Mr. Buran Sivkot Yudches quotes it, he has to make a new bracha on the roll. What do you mean? Bread? It's the same bread. Zok the Mr. Buran, according to Maimon Mordechai, Maisav Maichichen. Rabbi, why'd you buy one roll? You could have bought two, and if you didn't need it, put it in the freezer. The Torah says you bought it with this das, mifureshes, one vizehu. Therefore, you can't extend it. In other words, this is a hesech hadas, not a das. Hesech hadas. No. Hesech hadas, you need a new bracha, even on bread. Zok the Taz, but let's say you're home and you have a loaf of bread, you cut off a size piece of the challah, of the bread, and then you decide to have more, then you could eat more without a new bracha. Because you didn't do a ma'aseh fakert, you just cut off a small piece. The derech is, people go from piece to piece. It's only when you have a hesech hadas, buying one roll does not include a second roll. Now, I saw the Kaf HaChaim, Sivkot and Chavdal, said, let's say you're in the middle of eating the first roll, and say, oh, this is very good. I'm going to go and buy another one. So he says, oh, that's good. Because if you connect during the Achila, then you're utilizing the bracha, and that's okay. So you see, it's really one yesod that you have to just be aware of as we proceed. Very interesting question. A person fried 2 blintzes, l'mashal, for lunch. Then he decides, I want a third. Does he have to make a bracha on that third? So what's the shayla? It's all min echad. But the problem is, since you have to defrost it and fry it, maybe the fact that you took out 2, defrosted 2 and fried 2 is like 2 and not 3. It's like buying 1 roll and not 2. So the emes is, I can't find this in a Rashba, there's a new shayla, but could be in the olden days when defrosting and frying took a long time, so 2 and not 3 was like buying 1 roll and not 2 rolls. But today in the microwave era, everything takes, seconds, minutes. So I don't think when a person has 2, there's a hafkah, 2 and not 3. Now, if he cooked something that takes a long time to cook, and only this, and he wants to do more, it'll take him another hour, maybe that would be an hafkah, like buying 1 and not 2. But basically the aside is, the same food you could eat more of, because like we saw from the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Lashon, actually the Lashon of the Beis Yosef in Yerdei Yutes, derech of a person to go from achila ketana to achila gedoyla. So stam das might work if it's the same min, unless it's something that you dafka want this, like the most you bought 1 roll and not 2. A person made a mezainis on rice and now wants to eat cake. So this l'chayra is a problem because it's very different. Rice and cake. Rice is bar nefasha, it's not ala mechia. Rice, as we know, is not chameshes mini dagan, not shivas haminim. And va'ika rice, you can never wash and bench no matter how much of rice you eat. Cake, however, is a suffik pas. And that's why Rabbi Yashiv in his Shurim Mamsech the Brachas Amataf Mem Tes, that from rice to cake is like a min achal gamri. Even though it's the exact same bar min mezainis, but it's a totally different min. And if you look in the Mishnah Berurah and Reish Yud Aleph Lamed Beis, that if something is a different min in Gansin, then you really have to have das, something, but otherwise it will not cover. So the bracha on rice will not cover mezainis unless you sat down to a supper and you know you're going to have rice and you're going to have cake for dessert. So avada das could include anything as long as it's the same bracha. What's a little interesting of a question is a person made a shahakal on a drink and now he wants to have a food, fish. So this is mamish our Mishnah Berurah. that's considered a minacha legamri. Because drink is one food type of drink, and food is something else. And as we saw from the Mishnah, that's considered a min achar, even food to drink. Food is more chashuv than drink, but that's a min achar legamri. Now, if you made a bracha on one apple and you get a better quality apple, no, apples are apples. But this is two different minim in gansim. The Paiskim Clare, the Rav and say the Birchas Hanen and Tes Ois Zayin Clares, you made a bracha on lakshin, cooked mezainis. Now you want to eat passive of a kistin cake. They're both mezainis. They're both the shivas chamesh min dagan, but cooked lakshin is never kviya suda. You don't wash even if you have 20 bowls of lakshin. But cake, if you have kviya suda, you have to wash and bench. So the Rav says it makes sense. That's a different food in gansin, but at the end he comes out that it's not enough of a difference. So it's basically just, identifying, is this enough? Question, I urge you, approach with caution. It's a very challenging, beautiful shayla. Someone made a bracha on food, whatever it is, apples, let's say. A better case. He made a bracha on cake on Monday night in his house. He finishes eating a piece of cake. There's a doorbell rings. Oh, someone comes to his house. I heard you're making a simcha next week. I want to give you the first gift. Here's a cake. Put in the freezer. Enjoy it next week's Kiddush. Now, he did not expect getting cake on a random Monday night. I mean, if he's making a Kiddush, making a Shalom Zacha Friday night, so people come to the house Thursday night and Friday, maybe you could hopeful that you're going to get something. But on a random Monday night, no one brings you cake to your door. Now he looks at the cake that he got. It's better than the cake he has. He wants to eat that cake without a bracha. Cake to cake. Mamish similar. The problem is that he did not expect this at all. So if you look at the Mechaba and Kuf Ayin Zayin Sifei, Mechaba says a tremendous yisoid that's negea for us. A person made hamoitzi on bread, but he had no condiment, he had no butter to put on it. So he decided, okay, so I'll eat bread without butter, nothing wrong. And just then someone sent him a gift, butter. Zok the Mechaba, he has to make a bracha on the butter. It's a tuffle, but he had no das to pat the butter. He made a moitzi. It usually pat his tuffle, but he didn't have das. The Ramah argues, we'll soon see, and Ramah says bread meal is different. We'll get back to Ramah soon. But like the Mechaba, he made a moitzi on bread. He has to make a bracha on the tuffle. Why? Because you didn't expect it. Period. It comes out like this Shulchan Aruch, that in the case of the cake, if he totally did not expect to get that cake, although it's a min echad, but you can't say he patted what he had no adas in his wildest dreams. And therefore, even if it's the same food, he would have to make a bracha on that cake. L'idar gisa, a common shaila, a person goes to a simcha, and there's a nice, beautiful fruit platter, has many different fruits. So the right thing to do is pause and be a Shulchan Aruch Yid, what should I make a bracha on? So you make a bracha on the best fruit. Generally, Shivas Haminim, especially a grape, takes priority. But he didn't do that. He was, very much medagdik in Einik Shabbos, his Rizus, and he grabbed a mango. Simple mango to a Shivas Haminim. It's not going to work. That's a different min. But here we'll use the svara that the fact that the fruit platter is in front of you, he had das on the whole fruit platter. He was going to get to that later. So that's das, and the truth is, the Mishnah Berurah and Reish Vav, Chaf Aleph says if someone's kaveya on Paris, so it patters all Paris. I wouldn't say he's kaviyas on Paris, just Paris, he's eating other things, but it's enough that it patters the entire fruit platter. Another very thought-provoking question. You have few brachim and a dorm and a deer in Eretz Yisrael. Here's with the common child. He makes farina, and he finished, and he was thinking maybe we'll have more, but he's got fatracht. Just then a brachim over to him, I made fresh farina, would you like some of my farina? Oh. Can he eat the same farina, his friend's farina without a bracha? What's my shaila? Same min, right? He was Masiach Das, what's wrong? When he made the bracha, this farina wasn't ba'olam. His friend just made it. He made the bracha, it was chal on his part, not what wasn't made. Can a bracha be chal on a loy bala oilam? Now, since we learned the starting point, it has to be chal, right? So how can it be chal if it's not here? You can't be goyra a bracha on a food that wasn't ba'olam. It can't be chal. And then I saw even more so the Kaf HaChaim and Kuf Samach Tesit Kot Yud Ches. He speaks about the famous shayla that all the places can discuss, a leil shishi, that a person stays up for many hours and he has a coffee, has another coffee. So the Kaf HaChaim says, the bracha you made early in the evening does not pater a later coffee, because the later coffee was not ba'olam. Because in those days they brewed coffee, and the coffee that you have at 2 in the morning was only made 2 in the morning. So how could the bracha at 11 o'clock pater a coffee that wasn't existent? And he says, I amas hamayim, the bracha is chal on all the water. There's this pasuk, because all the water was ba'olam, just it was moving. But this coffee it was not created yet. And he says, you have das. Das helps shaloi b'fanav, but not what's not in the world. So the Kaf HaChaim and the Buchacha seem to hold that on a loy bala oilam the bracha cannot be chal. The only question is that applied to our farina question, because the emes is that it's not a total loy bala oilam. The ingredients are ba'olam. It's in the same home, the same farina, water, milk, whatever you use. Just you made it. It's hard to believe that's a loy bala oilam that the bracha can't be chal on. And I found the Yabia Oima Chelik Vav Simon Chav Zayin. Towards the end of the tshuva, Hitaka argues on that Kaf HaChaim. And the Buchacha also is not necessarily a stira, because that was something that was nilaish, that was a totally new creation. But pashta is something that at least the raw ingredients were ba'olam, the bracha could be chal. You could have a second portion of that farina. Listen to another fascinating shayla. A person made a bracha on latkes. Now the truth is, the shayla could be negea to potato latkes that are adama. But I'm going to make it even more challenging. He pureed the potatoes. He has a shakoil potato latke. Okay? Let's talk about that to make it more exciting. Now, generally, he eats sour cream with his latkes, but there's no sour cream at home. So he decided to eat l'shem shemayim. He'll eat just the way it is. So no sour cream. Fine. After he took 2 bites, the Baruch Yeshua, someone came to his house, and sent him sour cream. Can he put the sour cream in and continue eating? So you wonder, what's the shaila? It's both shako and it's a tuffle. Not at all. True, it's a tuffle. But as we said many times, there's no such thing, a tuffle doesn't need a bracha. Every food needs a bracha. Rather, as the Mishnah says, mevarich ala ikka, upaitas atveila. The shako that you said on the latkes includes the sour cream, or even the adama includes sour cream. That's the way ikka tuffle works. But Rabbi Yid, when you made a shako or adama on the latkes, there was no tuffle. I'll say, but what do you mean? But in my case, it was shako latkes and shako sour cream. What's wrong? But this we said earlier on a tuffle, the bracha is not chal. We said it's a machava. The case of you're middle of the bread meal and someone brought you butter, and l'chayra, this is klar. When you made a bracha on the ikka and you had no plan of getting a tuffle, you would have to make a bracha on the tuffle, even if it's the same bracha, shakel and kolshkein, if the latkes were adama and the tuffle is shakel. Now the truth is, sometimes, maybe a lot of times, a person is hopeful, maybe he'll find a tuffle or get a tuffle, fine. But if it's a clear-cut situation that there was no das on the tuffle, he would have to make a new bracha on the tuffle, even if it's the exact same bracha of shahakol. The only chiddush that I saw was the following scenario, which is also could come up. Someone goes down to the coffee room and he wants to have a coffee, but there's no sugar. Okay, so he'll drink coffee l'shem shemayim. He'll have coffee without sugar. He starts drinking the coffee, and again, someone comes who also had the problem, but he was a little less lazy, and he went out and bought sugar. So he mixes the sugar in his coffee, he wants to drink it. He says, what am I doing? I have to make a shakel on the coffee, on the sugar. It was a bracha, there was no there's no bracha chal on that. So I saw the Shmir HaShabbos in Nundalet Samach Zayin and the Pischei Halacha in Zayin Ara 25, Machavim to the same Yisoid, that Enochanami, if you put a tuffle on the ikka, you put sour cream on a latko, your mayonnaise on salad, you have to make a bracha. But sugar that is a soluble, that liquefies and merges and becomes one, mamish one, with the coffee, is bottled to the coffee, and you could take the sugar without a bracha. Okay. Another fascinating shayla. Listen to this. Someone comes home from work, and he wants to have a drink. He's going to wash for supper in 15 minutes. And he sees there's a nice piece of salmon waiting, so he's a little more excited than usual for supper. He has das for the salmon, daitar Allah, he's going to get back to that soon. When he says a shahakal, he doesn't have a mind to pata the fish because he's going to wash. You don't need a shakal. But then he decides now he has no time to wash and he has no time to wait for the fish. He's going to have the fish and start supper now. Does he have to make a new shakal on the fish? What's the shayla? He made a shakal on drink. Why can't it go on the fish? I drink the food, but he had das to eat the fish, and the fish was b'fanav. Das and b'fanav. The only problem is, the logistics of this gentleman was, he planned on washing. Now he wants to do what? Use the bracha he didn't have das with? So here we have a fascinating scenario. He had das to eat it, but he had no das to pater it. And as Alma Mailus mitzad echad, it's a fun of das, but you didn't want to use the shackle, you didn't need it. So the Tilo David and the Ashmotas in Simon Reish test has this very shaila, and he says, Enochanami, you had no das to pater, you can't pater. So he's going to come out very muddy, he's making a shackle on drink, shackle on fish. However, there's a possible tzat to be makel, I think it's emes. Imagine someone had a few fruits, same bracha, but he thought that the bracha doesn't pater all the fruits. For some reason, he made a mistake. And he made a bracha, thinking he has to make another one. And then someone says, no, it's good. The bracha is good. Zokta b'kiva ega on the Gillian and Sif Hey, this very shaila, that he could eat the others without a bracha. Why? He planned on eating them. He didn't have the das to pata, but you don't need necessarily das to pata. You need das to eat. You made an eitz, it's a good eitz, use it for those fruits. And he brings a raya from a Tvu Ashur. In Yeridei Yud Tes Lamed Gimel, and you look it up, the Tvu Ashur. He says beferish, if you decide not to eat more than this, so then the bracha is on this, not that. But if you knew you're going to eat more, you just didn't have a mind to pata more because you thought you didn't have to, that it wouldn't help to pata. But l'mais, if the bracha is good, and you knew you're going to eat, and you had das to eat, it's good enough. In other words, as the Rav says so beautifully in Reish Vav Tes, you don't necessarily need das to pata. You need das to eat another fruit. Generally, it's hainuhach, right? But in this case, it's chap be'greis and nafkamina. Because in this case, my case, he had shackle on the drink, he had a mind to eat the fish, but he didn't have a mind to pata the fish. But he didn't have a mind not to eat the fish. So I would believe light the Rav and Sif Tez that das lechel is enough, and light Kivaega and the Tvu Ashur, our case would not need a new bracha on the fish. Because he had a shackle, a good shackle, that could cover the fish because he had das and lefanov. He didn't know it works. So here, you might say he didn't have a mind the shackle should go on the fish. But it's not because he's not eating the fish, he felt it's not necessary. So the chayra, I think at least if it's tzarechiyah, maybe the shackle could go on the fish because he knew he's going to eat it. Das lechol might be enough. Probably those that are the tilodava that's machma holds, there's a hafkah of the das. But I'm not sure why I have to say that. I wasn't not. I just felt it wasn't necessary. But if I want to use it when I need it, could be. I think it would include that as well. Question. As you see, there are sometimes a bracha doesn't help on every food as we would like it to help. If you have das, then anything. You can make a shot on the most inferior food and you have a mind to pata the best food, it works. Grada, that shouldn't happen because in Hilchas Brachas, Hilchas Kedimas, make on the most superior food. But Lui Yitzur, you made on an inferior food, you could pater with das anything. So now let me ask you a very simple question. So why leave ourselves to Sveikis? Why don't we make a bracha on any food and have a das mefureshes, like say in America, anywhere USA? Anything I get my hands on, I'm including. Well, I don't have to rack my brain, better food, include. I'm having a bracha das on all foods of eitz, all foods of shackle, and then I'm safe. In other words, stam das is limited. We're going to call das mefureshes on everything. No, everything is everything. The only thing is that a reality? Das means you want to include something. What do you want to include? Could you have a stam das? Does that make sense? Who are you fooling? But then again, what do you mean? I want to preempt the problem. If I end up having a shaila, so that's part of my meal. I want to include it. And indeed, the Ramah on our Sif Hey, where we have sveik is what to do, the Ramah says, Toiv l'chatchilli is daiti al kol mashia v'yuloi. You make a eitz, all-inclusive. Make adama, all-inclusive. Don't get involved with sveikis. Now, it's interesting. The source of the Ramah is a Beis Yosef in Yeridei Yutes, as I told you, one of the parallel sugis. And there the Beis Yosef says the same eitz regarding a suffix in Hilchos, in Birchos Shchita, Ayin Sham. So we have a Beis Yosef, Mechaba, and Ramah, that Das Mefereshes helps. So to put this Lamaisa, you make an eitz on an apple, you say, I'm making a brach on any fruit. Then, if I decide to eat a grape, which is a real upgrading, it's Shivas Minim, I'm covered, no problem. Now, the only issue that I couldn't find before, I don't know why, but I couldn't find too much before is this Shaila. Let's say you got something totally unexpected. I made a bracha in my house on an apple, das mefureshes, anything. Just then, the doorbell rings, you're making a shalom zacha. Next week, I'm bringing you grapes, put it in the freezer. Okay, funny person. But anyhow, I got grapes, fresh grapes. Can I eat the grape now? I had no das to get grapes delivered to my house Monday evening. So l'chayil will say, well, you said das mefureshes. But can you create a das that doesn't really exist? I mean, you could think of maybe, but something that's totally unexpected. So I found the Piskei Chuvais in Siman Reish Vav, Ha'or 58, says it doesn't help if it's totally unexpected. Now, apparently it has to be somewhat realistic. Okay, you could say, but I really include everything? No. So that we'll leave that as a tzarachin. But now my next question is something that's much more negeya. Here we see that stam das is limited, das mefureshes is very helpful, and if you have das mefureshes, you're okay. How about, I want to be a step ahead of the game. I say today, Shimon Rabbi Sayyana Mumchim, I am saying for the rest of my life, whenever I make a bracha on any food, it's going to be das mefureshes, bein megilgal zeh, bein megilgal acha, totally inclusive. Can I do it once in my lifetime, and then I'm good to go? You know, people like to be ogedavend, I'm ogebrachit. So I don't have problems. And the embassy, you say, well, this is unheard of. We do it every year. Thursday Darim, Reishit Alf and Yeredeya. We once mentioned this regarding the sveikis of tzedakah. If I thought of giving, I wanted to give him. I sent the tzedakah. He didn't get the. We said an eitzah. You say once for all. I am not giving. It's not chal tzedakah until it reaches the ani's hand. So I want to apply that to our case. My brachis from now on, is mefureshes, including the unexpected sheba unexpected. And the raya would be from Ataras Nadarim. But if you think about it, it's not really a raya. Because both Ataras Nadarim and tzedakah have a common denominator. It has to be pivali by shavim. You want to make an eder. You want to give tzedakah. If I could circumvent that by saying, I don't want to make an eder, I don't want to give tzedakah until it reaches the ani's hand, then there's no pivali b'shavim. I wasn't conscious about it b'shas ma'isa, but that's still not pivali b'shavim. I'm withholding what I don't want to be chal. But here it's just the opposite. Here you want to make a das, including everything. That's good now. 3 weeks from now, do you have any das? You're not thinking about anything but the food. Where's the das? Imagine someone says, from the rest of my life, I'm having Krishma Kavanas Arizal. I'm all programmed. Doesn't work. You can't have Kavanas with a programmed das. That works. I don't want. Because I don't want. I really don't want. Certainly subconsciously. But when you need das or kavana, and I was very happy I saw this, the Pischei Halacha in Michtav Lamed Vav has basically this Yisoid, and he goes a step further. The Halacha in Tov Samach Sif Aleph says that when you bake matzahs, you don't have to have a mind every minute to say L'Shem Matzah's Mitzvah. Once a day is enough. Now, the assumption is if you say it once a day, you're doing it the whole day. But no one says you could say it once in your lifetime. You can't create a kavana, there's no kavana. And the chayr, the same is true, you can't create a das if there's no das. The only thing is I saw once, and I looked it up now, I was right, the B'chacha in Madura Tinyana Simon Ches, he discusses about the bracha on a talis gadol, patering talis katan, or vice versa. He's talking about talis gadol, talis katan. So he says, Galisi daiti pam achas al kol yemei chayai, that the bracha on the talis gadol goes on talis katan. So you see that once in a lifetime does work. But that really not such a big chiddush to me, because really it's one mitzvah, and we all, when you get married, you know you're making a talis gadol, it's almost a built-in das. But you don't think about it consciously, and but it's there. That's normal. But to say when I made a bracha on a snack, I'm chopping an apple, that I had in mind grapes, maybe there's a das, and you can't create a das, it doesn't exist. But what I do think is true, and this I think is the MS Pashit in the way people live as a social way of life today. Today, many people, their stam das is really das mefareshes. Let me explain. Rabbi Chaskel Levenstein, the Moifas Hadar, he used to make up before he started eating how many bites he's going to eat. And when he finished his amount of bites, he stopped cold turkey. That's a very disciplined person. Okay, not everybody's as disciplined, but people used to be a meal, and that's it, finished. Rabbi Victor Miller said, never went to the refrigerator, look, what could I find now to eat? Whatever they served, and that's it. He never went to a refrigerator looking. I mean, today, I don't want to say this, but today we're, Rosh Ruba B'Shulchanai, or Leipasik Pume from something else, I don't want to say. But, where anywhere USA is our attitude, especially Baruch Hashem, we have more food. So certainly we don't have that discipline that they used to have, that when they made a bracha on this, it's only this, unless you have a mind that today it's stama, everything. And again, I don't think anybody's insulted, but that's really the way people do it. Friday night you're at home and you're learning a few hours, so you make a bracha on a apple. Don't you have a mind you might have grapes later if there are grapes available? Do you have to have a das mefareshes, stam, whatever's in the refrigerator, because I get up an hour from now. So not that we have to say it once and it has to be chal. Maybe the whole mitzias of ours is more of a das mefareshes. And Rav Wozner in the Tshuvas, I think this is what he means to say, in Chelik Testament, Mem Gimel, the end of Sifkat and Beis, discusses a very challenging question. He made a bracha on milk, and then he wants to drink coffee. Does the bracha on the milk cover the coffee? Because part of the coffee is the milk. So he goes through that, and he says, but the truth is, today, Bizman Hazeh, any bar kolkach, he says, that maybe that the whole inyan of Hamalacha, of changing Befrat Bizman Hazeh, any bar kolkach. I'm not sure the whole changing exists today, because today it's basically, the attitude of anything, anywhere. So that I could understand. Okay. Question. A person is at home, he's in the middle of breakfast and he washed. His son comes home, who's supposed to be by minyan, and he says, I'm sorry, I woke up late, but it's a good thing I did. I went to a bris, here's a bagel. He brings the father a bagel, that's the shaykh, I shouldn't get punished for missing shachris. Now, assume this boy is a good boy who never misses shachris. The kids of the father never ever expected to get a bagel from a bris delivered to his house during his regular breakfast. He wants to eat that bagel without a new bracha. He has bread in front of him, the breakfast in front of him. So this, Rabbi say, is our halacha that I mentioned earlier, Kuf Ayin Zayin Sif Hey, where the Mechaber says that if you get an unexpected dairin, you have to make a bracha, even if it's a tafel. However, now we're going to learn the Ramah. V'lo re'isi nizharim b'zeh, the after the timer, the stam this chiddush. You're in the middle of a bread meal, and I stress that, you have das to everything. Even the unexpected doirin, the gift, is included. What's pshat in the Ramah? You have das on unexpected gifts. Zakta levush in Kuf Ayin Zayin Gimel, yes. Since it was fairly common to get gifts unexpectedly, it wasn't so unexpected. In other words, the gift is not so unexpected. Zakta Archashulchan and Sif Tes, today that we don't get gifts, the Ramah's Moed, you have to make a bracha on that unexpected gift. However, and I want to be makateh the Sefer Liban HaBracha Simon Zayin, who discusses this question very beautifully. He says that the Maimon Mordechai and Kuf Ayin Dalet Zayin Tilo David both ask a question that we see there's a tremendous yisod that we're missing. Because the Taz that I mentioned earlier asks a kasha. Why, if you buy another bagel, you have to make a bracha on the other bagel, because you had no das in the bagel. Either Amos says bread meal, you don't make a new bracha. So what's the shaychus? This is a gift, and this is a bread meal. And the only teretz that the Maimon Mordechai says is, you bought one is not two. So he says, and that's the Pashup Pshat in the Maimon Mordechai, apparently it's not the Pshat because you expect gifts that you could eat a gift. When you have a Suda Kavua, you have a bread meal, it includes everything. Even unexpected gifts, even if you're not expecting it. That's why the kasha is, if there's a special inclusion of a bread meal that includes everything, so why did the Taz say that if you buy a second bagel, you have to make another bracha on the second bagel? That's beautiful, Masik Midvash. Because it includes everything unless there's a das fakert. If you buy one bagel, it's one and not two, that's like a das safucha. That's not included. So like this understanding of the Ramah, Rabbi say it's a Ramah, that a stam bread meal includes everything, then our case of the bagel that your son brings from a bris is included. You didn't expect it, you're not expected. As long as there's no das, hafucha. Now why do I stress that? Because Lamaisa, this will help us with our very challenging question that comes up quite often. A person ate at home. He left without benching, he made a mistake. He ended up at work, or he ended up wherever he ended up. He can't go back home now. He's not mechuyev to because he left b'shaygig. Can he eat a little bread in the place where he is now and bench going back in that also? So the Shulchan Aruch and Kuf Bey Dalet Siv Bey says he could. You had no das to eat bread at work. You barely found a piece of bread. You had no das to pat of the bread. This is the side of the Ramah that a bread meal includes everything unless it's hafka. And that's why the Mishnah Berurah Taka says you could eat bread in the second place. You don't need a kazayis even. A little bit bread and you could bench in the second place. Which is one of the questions we began with, because that's the special heta, and that's the hezbah in Kuf Bey Dalet Beis. He could eat bread in another location and bench for both locations. The only exception, which is obvious, in a bread meal that you have to make a new bracha, is dessert. In fact, dessert, even if you have das to pata, doesn't pata for a different reason, because it's not eaten l'svaya. But taka, a bread meal, includes even the unexpected gifts, and you could eat bread in a second place. I'll give you two examples. You ate a Shabbos food at home. There's an unexpected knock on the doorbell. We're having several brachas. Please come bench with us. You have no das to eat or bench with them. They need you for a siyum, marshal. Please come to us, bench, and we want to have a zimun for benching, and then we'll say Kaddish. If you want to go there, you could. You'd have mind to eat there. Bread meal extends anywhere. Just two more points I wanted to mention. The question of guests is very important because that's the big exception to Hilchais Brachais. Generally, when someone has a mind for a certain food, basically the kavanah is for this, not for that. To start extending it, you have to go back to the klal we learned today. The Mechab in Kuf Ayin Tes Siv Beis, and again in Sifei, twice he says this. He says, but if you're a guest by someone else, then you don't have to make a new bracha on anything. Why? We're very pashit. Sifkat and Yezayin. Because when a person's on his own, he decides this, and maybe that, but not that. His das decides. But here you're being served, you're basically at his mercy, so I would say it's almost like the Ramah's das mefereshes, if not more. You have das on anything, anywhere, because you're not calling the shots. And I'll show you how beautiful this sugya is. Let's say the balabas in Milasud chaps, I wanted to serve you something, ketchup, and you want ketchup, right? I don't have it. I'm going to go run out and buy ketchup. And he dashes out and comes back with ketchup. So it comes out, l'chayr dava pashit. The balabas would have to make a bracha on that ketchup, but not the oireach. Why? I die levoyim and adin liyas kanadan. It's not true. For the balabas, it's not included. For you, it's anywhere USA. In fact, it's pashit if an unexpected gift that's not included comes to the balabas, he has to make a bracha, and you don't have to make a bracha. Why? The oireach has a special, unlimited license. Even what the balabas has to make a bracha on, the oireach doesn't. Now, it's lav dafka oireach. I don't want to get personal, but it could be someone in his own home. If his wife serves and he just takes whatever he served, I saw a whole list of paiskim with Buchacha and Yashiv. They all say that's considered oireach because you're not deciding what to get. A boy in yeshiva, a child in camp, they're not a guest in that sense, but they're being served. So if the camp has a very special surprise, no one thought of it, doesn't make a difference. If someone goes to a smorgasbord, buffet, these type of scenarios, and everything is in front of him, but he's deciding what he wants to take. A little trickier, because really, you're deciding. But then again, you don't see everything, so probably your das is everything. So everything is like an oireach, wherever they serve. How about an oireach that's very much on a diet, and he has a good meal, and he said, I'm not eating anything else. And just then the balabas comes out, I made a special dish, please take some. Does he have to make a new bracha? Could he say, I can't eat? So this halacha is, even if the oireach says, let's bench, but he's a tali b'das acher. And I must mention, in the Akdama to Bir Agra, there's an incredible story the Goin's children wrote about the Goin. He once was a guest by someone, and the guest gave him to eat. And the Goin couldn't tolerate that food. But he told him to eat it, so he ate it, and he threw it up. The guest the balabas didn't notice, gave him again, and he ate it again. It happened a few times. Someone asked him, what are you doing? You see it doesn't agree with you. He says, the Gemara says, Kol ma'ashem balabais asay, it's din ha-Gemara ad kidei mesiras nefesh. The Goin said. So finally someone told the balabas, this is getting out of hand. But that's the aside of a balabais. And the other question the question that we began with, the question of the water fountain, seemed like a challenging question, but it's not so challenging. A water fountain, we think, is very similar to the Ambas Hamayim. But the truth, if you think about it, it's not true. The Ambas Hamayim, the water changes constantly. The typical water fountain of today, there's water cooled in a reservoir, in a tank on the bottom. So the water is really there. So technically, you could put your hand on the fountain and make a bracha like that. I only taking out afterwards a drop of water, but then again, the chassan makes the bracha on the big koilech challah, doesn't have to eat the whole challah, right? It's on the whole challah. So really, the water's there, it's not like changing. But the problem is, if you have to fill up the cup after the bracha is said, that might be unnecessary hefsek. So the right thing to do with a water fountain is try to get a cup, fill up the cup, and make a bracha on the cup. If there's no cup available, not als the amas hamayim, als the yisoid of hefsek, put the water on, and then make the bracha, and then you could drink. And just to leave with something that someone asked me, he says that Shaila happened, he remembers his Gersli Yankasa, you saw someone had a Danish, and you wanted a piece, but he wasn't going to give it to you. So you make a bracha, bari amina mezainas, no. Gedenkst, sounds familiar? So the Shaila is, besides Geneva, this is Talyu v'Yovs, which is definitely Geneva, but Hilchas Brachas, maybe the bracha is nachal. It wasn't in your hand, it wasn't lefanech, it wasn't yours. It's way below. So the emes is that's the minor problem. Because for that you could say, I'll handle with him, I'll pay him afterwards. So maybe the bracha is chal, even you're not holding on to it, but it's wrong, I'll Hilchas Geneva, and that's why it shouldn't be done. I got to talk to you all.
Such a beautiful shir. Rabbi Smith, a bracha of dein Kopf. The Hebische helfen all Sachen brachas in Yeshua's Bechol and Yonim. Whoever wants to sponsor share, please call Igensher Torah 718-851-8651 or send the email to igenshertorah@yeshivanet.com. Aber Gamle Kasche Oimer, Lotte Kodesh Baruch Hu, Zaka es Yisrael, Fige Chibur mit seinem Mitzvah, Shenem, und Nachofas mein Zitkoi, Jagdil Teure V'Yadi,